All right, I now want to talk to you about personal brand. And this is something I spoke a lot about to the players that I coached and also to my sons. So, what is your personal brand? Probably something that you've heard about, or maybe even something you've worked on. If you've worked on it, that's fantastic. But simply put, the personal brand is how you act, right? Really simple. How do I act? What are my behaviors? How do I show up? All right. I see a lot of people that say that, they're honest, they're hardworking, they're supportive, or whatever that might be, but their actions don't meet their values. And I would suspect they've never really sat down to articulate and be intentional about what their personal brand is. All right. So simply put, your personal brand is how you act. And every person you meet will have a version of you inside their head. So every interaction, no matter how great or small, people are going to have a version of you and your actions. And then as a result of those actions, they'll start to describe you to other people. Roosie is X, Y, Z. And I'm going to give you some examples of that shortly. But once again, let's go over that. What is your personal brand? It is simply put, your personal brand is how you act, all right? Not how you think you're perceived through, I want to be X, Y, Z. I want to be honest, or I want to be hardworking, or I want to be loyal. It is how you act. And then every person that meets you will see your actions and then make a decision on what your personal brand is. All right. Why is understanding and defining my personal brand so important? Because then you start to think about, how do you want others to see you? All right. So if we start to define it and we start to understand it, then we can start to think, well, how do I want others to see me? How do I want others to describe me? So you're looking through a slightly different lens. We're going to have a sort of value set through our upbringing and what's normal. And we've gone over that in a few of the other modules. But we want to try and be intentional with our personal brand. So when we're starting to understand and defining it, and it's important because how do you want others to see you? And then how do you want to show up? Having a bad day, right? Something's happened. How do you want to show up? What is your roadmap for how you behave? The perception of your brand, and this is a really, really big one and a really, really important one, because the perception of your brand could determine your job, your partner for life, your friend group, and illustrated by the first three, your future. All right. So it's really, really important we start to understand and define it. Because once we do that, we can control it more than if we just let it organically develop. All right. Then what if we don't define the personal brand? Now, we can sort of go through life and use our value set and use our experiences. And most of the time, things are going to go okay. But ultimately, if we don't define it as a roadmap for who we are, you're going to have no foundation for your decision making, which is obviously critical because life is going to present you with so many decisions to make. And if you haven't got a foundation of who you are and your personal brand, it's going to become really difficult. Now, it'll become difficult and you will often be dictated by external factors. So if you don't know who you are and you haven't defined your brand, then you're going to get distracted or dictated to by other things. And under pressure, you're likely to be driven towards the strongest and loudest voice. And we would all have examples of that, clearly. All right. So you'll have no foundation for your decision making. You'll often be dictated by external factors. And then under pressure, and this is when you probably got to make the hardest decisions, you will likely be driven towards the strongest and loudest voice. Now, it's not always going to be wrong, but once again, you will do things. So above all, you will start to do things that just don't feel right. A lot of things you'll do, and based on your normal value set and your upbringing, even if you articulate it, hopefully you've got enough experience to be able to do that. But I guarantee if we don't understand and define who we are, you're going to do things that just don't feel right. And again, we've all done that. At the end of the day, big decision has to be made for whatever reason, and it just doesn't sit right with us because we haven't defined and understood who we are. All right, I'm going to give you some examples now. And for me, probably living under somewhat of a spotlight since I went to Fitzroy at 16, 17, I was quite conscious of it. All right. And I sort of understood because everything, was exposed through the paper, obviously results and games and all that sort of stuff. So even that's a good lens to look through. If you were going to make a decision and it was on television when you were making that decision, would that decision change? Would you go back to your value set? But one particular story I remember, because I was fairly cognizant of my personal brand, but I remember going to the SCG one day and I was coaching the Sydney Swans. Went to the SCG and I sat in the outer to watch the seconds play. Right now, that's probably my first mistake because I was effectively working, but the fact that I put myself in the general area was probably an indication to the people around me that I wasn't working. I'd just come to the game, I was sitting in the outer, enjoying myself before coaching the senior team. And I remember this person came up to me, started talking to me, and I sort of wasn't intentionally rude, but I was working, and I really sort of ignored her again, wasn't rude. I didn't think anything of it. Right, so this is the thing with it. 99 of the interactions that day may have been positive. This one was negative. On a Monday morning, I think I got an email or a phone call through the CEO, and lady complained, it's terrible. Paul Roos was rude to me. He's watching the seconds, ignored me, blah, blah, blah. And I think because I wanted to hold myself accountable to who I was able to make a decision under pressure to say, okay, I've done the wrong thing. All right. We are going to make mistakes and we're going to make the wrong choice. But if we do know who we are and what defines us, then the next part of what we do is going to be relatively simple. So the lady had a phone number on the email. I rang her up and I apologized. And she was really nice. She said, look, I really appreciate it, Paul. I understand, you might have been coaching, blah, blah, blah. But it was unacceptable because that's not the way I wanted to be seen. So that was a really good example for me, even though I was quite cognizant of my brand. That was one slip up, but I went back to who I wanted to be and made a decision based on that to say, I know I have to bring up and I have to apologize. As I said, I used to talk to my two boys, Dylan and Tyler, a lot about personal brand. What is your personal brand? What is your personal brand? What is your personal brand? And I know Dylan talks about this a lot in his mentoring program. One day, I got a phone call. I was coaching the Melbourne Football Club. I was sitting in my office. I got a phone call, and it was our media manager. Picked up the phone, said, "G'day." He said, "Brucey, do you want to comment on Dylan losing his license?" And I was like, I need to make a phone call. So I rang Dylan. I said, "Mate, how are you? You got something to tell me?" He said, "Oh, no, Dad, things are going well. What's going on?" And I said, "Well, mate, you realise you've just lost your license." And he didn't even know because he didn't even attend the court case at the time. But whilst it was not a great thing to happen, because as you can see the headlines here, AFL star Paul Roos' son ordered off road after drink driving. I found out before him, probably when the penny dropped for him, really, that all those things that I was saying to him about, always being careful, your actions, what is your brand? What is your brand? What is your brand? I probably spoke to him about it, I don't know, 50 times, 20 times, whatever it was. All right. So whilst this wasn't a great incident, it was good for Dylan to then finally realize, what did I really mean by that? Okay, because this could have impacted him in a number of different ways. So a negative sort of turned into a positive, and then he realized what personal brand was. This is a great one. I love this. Dexter, I know you'll be watching this. He's one of our people within the program, which is great. So Dexter put this online, and I absolutely loved it. And he headlined it personal brand. And I'll read it out because it's fantastic. He said, I'm on holidays in Bali and having an amazing time. It's also a great learning experience for the kids, are blown away by the grace of the people and their pride in their jobs. At dinner last night, we were served by a guy who places so much value on his personal brand that he has his own QR code to give him reviews on Google. He was that good. I paid $90 for a steak for the first time in my life. It was worth it, I thought. We had an incredible experience, and my son was so impressed. He wrote 3 reviews for this guy. We then walked onto the streets where people were trying to sell us anything and everything. It was a stark contrast on how personal brand can be your greatest sales influencing technique, but also your greatest enemy if you don't invest in it. Great story. So someone that's made a really conscious effort to say, oh, this is who I want to be, and I'm going to hold myself accountable, but I'm also going to let other people hold me accountable through Google reviews. Really good story. I also want to talk about legacy. All right. So some of you on this program, well, many of you are going to be different ages. Some of you are starting your leadership journey, some are in the middle, but a lot of what we're now talking to with some of our clients, particularly the older ones, is about legacy. And really that comes back to personal brand also. What do I want to stand for? What do I want people to remember me for? Now, this is my dad on the left-hand side here. My dad worked at the TNG for many, many years, which was then taken over. So he's really in insurance for, I don't know, 40 years or whatever he was. He passed away about sort of 7 years ago. One of the proudest times for me was when I'd run into someone that knew him, which was amazing. And everyone said the same thing. Everyone said, oh, Paul, it's, no, I knew your dad. I worked with him at the TNG. I worked with him at CGU. He was a really good person, really friendly, really honest, really honorable guy. So think about those words: friendly, honest, honorable. And that was a really proud moment for me because I saw him the same, but it was great the fact that he would show up to work, which is clearly a different environment, and everyone said the same thing. All right. So that consistency of the way people saw him was based on his behaviors, and his behaviors didn't change. So that was fantastic. Recently, unfortunately, I lost a teammate, Ross Thornton. But again, this legacy piece or this personal brand piece, and going to the funeral, Rossi was a great player, great teammate of mine, won a best and fairest in 1984. But it was another reminder of how important, your value set is to you. When Robert Wall spoke and a teammate of mine spoke, Laurie Serafini, it wasn't about his achievements. It wasn't about his best and fairest and his kicks, marks, and handballs. They spoke about, once again, his value set, his honesty, his diligence, his loyalty to his teammates, his hard work. Okay, so it's really, really important that we understand the impact that we do have on people through our personal brand, but how important it is to show up consistently to do it. All right, I now want you to start to think about an exercise. We're going to do an exercise now and start to, as I said in the first slide, not only will people have a certain thought about you based on your values, you're going to have a certain, thoughts about other people as well. All right. So the exercise is, now you may not know all these people, so you don't have to go through them all. Right. But I want you to describe in 3 words, right? 3 or 4 words, the first words that come into your mind: Taylor Swift, Patrick Cripps, Ivan Cleary, Serena Williams, Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, Anthony Albanese. And this is not to get political at all, but what I want you to think about, even though we don't know these people and we've probably never met these people, we still have a perception of who they are and what they are and their personal brands, again, through their actions. So I want you to put this part, just put me on pause. All right, so just pause the vision now and take, 5 to 10 minutes just to reflect on each of those. If you don't know them, you don't have to, put 3 words if you don't know them. All right. But again, starting to think about even people we've never met before, we are going to have a perception of their personal brand. So put me on pause, 5 or 10 minutes, and then come back to the video. This is a really interesting one, all right? Will Smith. And this is how even one incident can change things dramatically, right? So if we're not really clear on who we are, we're not holding ourselves accountable to that particular person, okay, under pressure, it's going to be really difficult. Under pressure, it's going to be really hard. So I'm sure you all have seen it. If you haven't, look it up. Will Smith at the Oscars. All right, it's really interesting. He goes up on stage and he slaps Chris Rock. So have a look at the vision. Now, what I've done here is I've done pre-Oscar incident. So if I was to describe Will Smith prior to the Oscars, and I've written it down, I would say he would have been professional, respectful, and popular. Go and make your own assessment. So do the exercise as well. How would you describe Will Smith if you've heard of him? I'm sure most of you have. Now, on the right-hand side, I haven't written it down, but there's a how would you describe him now? Okay. Now, again, it's not to say we're not going to make poor decisions, but if we know who we are, we articulate it, we're less likely to do that. And if we make those poor decisions, we straight away respond in the way we want to be seen because we want to hold ourselves accountable. So that's a really interesting one. Okay, this one on Roger Federer. I want you to listen to this.
I think being kind should be normal because there's enough toughness in the world. So I think for me, understanding that actually you could get to the very top in a kind way, you could take a lot of turns the other way, say like, no, we're going to get tough and rough and ruthless, but not through life. I think it doesn't deserve that.
Now, what I love about Roger Federer, you're talking about one of the greatest tennis players, one of the greatest athletes of all time. He talks about kindness. So I'm just presuming that his values, and then there's two other clips. If you want to go and find them, you can see them. And he talks about imperfection and he talks about respect. So if his personal values were kindness, imperfection, or accepting your imperfections and adjusting to them and using them when you're disappointed because you've lost, realizing that, well, I'm not perfect, and then you move on, and respect. He walks his walk, because if that's who he says he is, I mightn't use exactly the same words in describing him, but they wouldn't be far off, would they? Kind, imperfect. I probably wouldn't say he's imperfect because he's a superstar, but I understand what he's saying. And he's incredibly respectful, incredibly respectful. So this is a really good example of someone that walks the walk, just doesn't say, I'm kind, I'm imperfect, and I'm going to respect people. He actually lives his doctrine. He does what he says he does, which is fantastic. It's a really good reminder. All right, so now, again, I want you to start another exercise. This one's going to probably be a little bit easier, but once again, it's designed to start to think about, what are you thinking about other people, right? How do they show up? So these should be easier to do. So I want you to describe in 3 words these people are closest to you. All right, so as I said, you'll have a much better understanding of what their value set is. So in 3 words, describe your best friend, your boss or your co-worker or someone you work with pretty closely at work, all right? Or if you're at school, someone at school. If you're at university, someone at university, okay? Now, if it's your best friend, just pick someone else. So I want two people. Now, if you are playing sport or you have played sport, pick a teammate, maybe your most selfless teammate. All right, so pick them. A coach, past or present, or a mentor, past or present. Your favorite teacher, if you're looking back. If you're at school or university, your favorite lecturer, and then be your closest relative. Okay, so I want you to do that exercise again in 3 words. Once again, I want you to pause the video, give yourself 5 or 10 minutes to be able to do this and start to think about people close to you and what they represent and who they are. Right, now we're getting to the crux of what we need to do. So now we're going to develop our own personal brand and we're going to define who we are. Okay, so how currently I want to ask you this question. Currently, as we sit right here and right now, as you're watching this video, how would you describe yourself in 3 words? And it might be 4. I'm not worried about the number of words in particular. Maybe spread it out. Just dump a heap of words on. All right. How would others describe you? So think about that. How do you think others would describe you? 3 or 4 words. So again, just write them down and pick a number of different people, friends, extended family, lecturers, co-workers, etc., etc. So now we've got to try and get an understanding of where we want to get to. Now, also go and ask a close friend, how would they describe you? Right? And maybe someone you've just met, someone you may have just met in the last week, it's good as well, because they've got no preconceived ideas to who you are. They're just going to talk about, how you show up really, right? And then go and ask, as I said, go and ask someone that doesn't know you too well to describe you. So we're going to do how you describe yourself. How would others describe you in 3 words, 3, 4, 5 words? Okay. Go and ask a close friend, and then ask someone who doesn't know you that well. So once again, 5, 10 minutes, just pause the video, give yourself some time to think. Right, now, how do I want to be described? So we're doing an audit check here. We're saying on the last slide, how do I see myself now? How do other people see me? But this is most important. How do you want to show up? All right, how do you want to be described? When people come across you, whether it's for 5 minutes or they're lifelong friends, how do you want them to describe you? So 3 words. Again, dump some words down and take your time with this one. This is fundamentally important for creating a blueprint for your personal brand. Pause the video, take as much time as you want to come back. And the interesting thing will be, where's the gaps? All right, so where's the gaps? So take as much time as you want, pause the video, and then come back when you're ready. All right, now, values are good, but what behaviors at the moment are holding you back? So what do you think the things are that you're doing right now? I'm being rude, I'm short to my parents, I'm spending too much time in my room, I'm not working hard enough, I'm not communicating well enough. All right, so these are more actions. So your value set, we've talked about who you want to be, how people see you. What are your behaviors? All right, so what are your actions and behaviors? So what behaviors at the moment are holding you back from being that person, that ideal person? All right, so how do I want to be described? What's holding me back from being described as such? So what behaviors at the moment are holding you back? Once again, pause the video, take as much time as you want, and come back. Now, what behaviors do I want to see moving forward? The reason we start with negatives, I don't want you to dwell too much on the negatives, but the reason we start with them because they're easy to flip around. I'm not communicating well enough. I need to be a better communicator. I'm not working hard enough. I need to make an effort to get into work half an hour earlier. Okay. So what behaviors do I want to see moving forward that are going to allow me, once again, how do I want to be described? All right. So what behaviors at the moment are holding me back? What behaviors do I want to see moving forward? Pause the screen again, take as much time as you want, and let's define the behaviors that you want to see moving forward. All right, once you define what your personal brand is and how you want to be described, who is going to hold you accountable? So we need some accountability because it's not easy. There's so many distractions, whether it's the pressure of school or university or team sport or going to work every day, the pressures of the interest rates and whatever they might be. So we want an accountability buddy, for want of a better term. So we've defined it through the exercise we've just done. Now, who's going to hold you accountable? And it needs to be close friend, family member, and regularly check in. This is who I am. How do you think I'm going? Because we're going to make mistakes. We're going to do things that go against our personal brand, but we're going to be intentional now. We're intentionally going to become this person. This is who we're going to show up as often as we possibly can. And if we make a mistake, We want the person that's holding accountable to tell us and be honest with us. And then we want to own it. If we need to say apologize, we apologize, but we need to own it, correct it, and move on. All right. And the actions need to be really consistent as to who we want to be. All right. So once you define your personal brand and how you want to be described, who is going to hold you accountable? This is me. So I just thought I'd finish with a couple of things. So Paul Roos, I want to be honest. I want to be loyal. I want to be supportive. And I've got a big focus on family. All right. So who holds me accountable? My wife's Tammy, my boys Dylan and Tyler, and my good mate who used to play footy with Johnny Blakey, and there's some other mates in there. So there's my personal brand: honest, loyal, supportive family. And there's the people that hold me accountable. So hopefully I'm doing a lot more right than I am wrong, but it gives me an opportunity. Was I honest today? Was I loyal with that person? Was I supportive? And am I doing enough for my family? So you should have something that looks like that now. All right. And I want you to keep that document where you can see it consistently. Now, if it changes over time, that's okay. But keep it with you. Keep that document. Really, really important, because this is going to be the blueprint for who you are. All right. Once again, what is your personal brand? Simply put, your personal brand is how you act. Every person you meet will have a version of you inside their head. Really important. Why is understanding and defining your brand so important? How do you want to be seen by others? How do you want to show up? And the perception of your brand could determine your job, partner, friends, future by extension. All right. What if I don't define my personal brand? Well, we've done that, which is great. So we've now done that, but you will have no foundation. So now you're going to have a foundation for your decision making. You're not going to be dictated by external factors. Yes, you're going to take them into a consideration, but keep going back to your personal brand when you're making decision makers. And then under pressure, you're not going to be driven towards the strongest and loudest voice. You're going to go back to who you want to be. And it's going to be a really good tool to make your decisions. And you won't be feeling that those decisions you're making just don't feel right. They'll start to feel different. Okay, it mightn't be a popular decision, but at the end of the day, it'll feel right. It'll feel much more comfortable for you to make the decisions based on your personal brand that we've just defined. Now, I just wanted to finish with this because it's super, super important. Under enormous pressure, the respect that Roger Federer has, and the question is, can you walk your talk? So we've set up the personal brand, keep it as close to as you possibly can, but be like Roger Federer. And I don't know how many percent of the time, but 95, 99% of the time, live your doctrine. Who do you want to be? Hold yourself accountable. Thanks very much.